Hey everybody, it's Jake. I wanted to welcome you to the Rediscovering Me YouTube channel. Just wanted to spend a few minutes kind of talking to you about the purpose of the channel, what I'm going to be talking about, some of the topics, and actually the trip that I'm on right now, the 3-week trip that I'm on, this rediscovery trip that I'm doing to kind of address those things. So first I want to say a special shout out to my wife, Jessica, and to a good friend of mine, Nick Gooden, who's turned me on to, actually encouraged me as I was telling him about this trip. He said, well, what are you going to do? Do you have any writing prompts? Do you have anything to think about? And Nick's been great at, helping kind of coach me in some different areas. So he suggested the book to me. I just want to share with you real quickly, called Leading with Character, 10 Minutes a Day to a Brilliant Legacy. So I haven't opened this yet. I'm excited to look into it. The cool thing, or the coolest thing about this is it's not just a book. There's actually a journal that goes along with it, which I've started to look at a little bit. So it's this personal credo journal, which I started looking at some of the prompts and stuff. So I wanted to read a couple of those to you, just so you can get an idea of some of these questions that I'm going to be working on, asking myself here over the next 3 weeks. And then also, too, this is 150 prompts over, however long that takes, about a half a year, for somebody to work on. So the first one, day one, which I'll be working on probably tomorrow. So what are the major themes in your life story thus far, such as overcoming obstacles, driven to succeed, fear of failure, negative private voice, never give up, low self-esteem, and so on. I'm going to jump ahead here. Actually, this is a pretty interesting one. Days 6 through 7. Write a synopsis of your life story up to the present day. Capture the most important themes and weave them together in a meaningful way. And then day 8 and day 9, and then I'm going to skip ahead real quick. So day 8, list 8 words that most accurately describe you at your best, when you're most proud of yourself. And then the opposite, right? And this becomes a little harder, right? Day 9 is list 8 words that most accurately describe you at your worst, when you're least proud of yourself. So those are just some of the questions, the first questions, which is like kind of the foundation. And then what I wanted to do was just hop ahead and kind of, read one of these from further on, so you can kind of understand that those questions you ask yourself up front really lead to things that you're asked as you continue to dive in from those first answers. So day 80, are you a resilient person? How quickly can you rebound from setbacks? How often can you intentionally turn disappointments into opportunities for learning and growth? So that gives you just a little sense of this journal, what it's about, how it's kind of setting you up for, the future. But I'm really excited about getting into this and starting to answer these questions. And my hope is that as I answer them, I'll be replying to them via video or on Instagram or through the other channels that we're setting up. So in addition to that, I got another book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving Enough, which I've heard or have had several people recommend. This is really good. So I picked that up today at the Amazon store at the mall here in Frisco. So I'll tell you a little bit about this trip, and then I'll get into some of the topics I'm going to talk about through this vlog, but also just in general, and things that I'm thinking about as I go through this process and go through these 3 weeks. So at the encouragement really of my wife, as well as my personal therapist that I've started with, I've been toying around with this idea for taking kind of a personal retreat for some time. The last 5 years for me have been nothing short of insane and crazy, from grief, from going through the loss of my first wife back in 2016, to some pretty significant trauma and abuse in 2017, to coming back home, addiction, food addiction, weight loss, up and down. So really, the 5 years have just been crazy, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, just in terms of some of those topics and how they've affected me. So with the approval and the support of my wife, family, and therapists and everything, I decided to take a trip out west. So from Illinois, So drove down here. I'm in Frisco, Texas now. I lived here for a short time in 2017, the beginning of 2017. I love the area. Fastest growing city in America. There's just so much going on down here. So I love it down here. Wanted to come down here for a couple of reasons. I have a good friend that I went to high school with that lives here. We're going to grab lunch tomorrow. I actually have a business meeting tomorrow afternoon for a potential project, which I'm excited about. But just kind of wanted to be around in some familiar settings and surroundings. That brought, it did bring some bad memories that time, but it also had some good memories of some time when I really connected with my kids after my first wife passed away when we were living down here. And like I said, I just love the area. So from here, I'm going west through Las Cruces, New Mexico, to see the White Sands Beach, which is something I've always wanted to see, and then to visit my late wife's brother, Jamin, who lives in Tucson, Arizona. Hang out with him, go hiking. Never been to Tucson. Plan to go north then, spend some time in Arizona at the national parks. I've never seen the Grand Canyon, some of those other national parks, and then into Utah to see some of those national parks as well. From there, I'm going up even further, up to Salt Lake City. My brother, technically my half-brother, but I call him my brother, lives just north of Salt Lake City in Ogden. I'm going to spend some time with him and his 8 kids. Many of them I've never met before. Connected on Facebook, of course, but never met. And then hoping to meet up with one of my best friends from high school, Brandon, who is a really successful tech CEO or CTO in Provo, Utah, Lehi, Utah. Hoping to spend a couple of days with him as well. From there, going back down to Moab, taking my Jeep off-roading. I have been there before, so I wanted to do that again since I did drive. And then heading to Colorado to visit some family friends outside of Denver, and then east to Kansas City to meet with some friends, and then back home. So intentional about where I'm going because I've got some family and friends in different places, but also hoping that during those days when I'm exploring some of the national parks that I can just kind of get lost, not physically get lost, but just get lost in the moment, exploring those spaces, exploring scenery and the beauty that's kind of around me, and processing some of those questions I kind of talked about. So that's what I'm doing the next 3 weeks. So that, and then combined with what I'm talking with you about, and some of the other topics I want to discuss are around the grief, the trauma, and addiction. And the addiction specifically for me, if you don't know me or don't know, I just had bariatric surgery, a gastric bypass on November 19th. Life-changing surgery, obviously, but it all ties into this because I've had an addiction with food for pretty much all my life. And it's serious. It's a real thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about or think about, and especially for males. I know I went through that class and everything, and the program, and the day I went for pre-surgery, I was the only male in the room. So I know not a lot of guys talk about it, but it is a real thing, and addiction's a real thing too. You see it on TV with drugs and alcohol and all kinds of other things, but food addiction is real too. And surgery is such an extreme thing, right? When you talk about addicts of other things, like if they relapse, they can go right back to it. With surgery, you can't. I had that surgery, and it was a cold turkey on everything. And let me tell you, the withdrawal symptoms were insane. Going from, I know we had my wife, we had a celebratory Diet Coke and meals leading up to it for a week. And then that night after the surgery, no more ever, some things, right, of sugar, carbonation, carbs, caffeine. It's you have to stop. Otherwise you get sick. You could get really sick. I ended up going to the hospital, having to have fluids 3 times because I got dehydrated. It's a serious thing. But anyhow, that surgery really led me, afterwards, and not the surgery itself, but the addiction led me into a pretty dark and deep depression of not having that crutch, not having that thing I can go back to when I'm stressed, I'm sad, I'm angry, whatever. I couldn't do it anymore. So, I know in the beginning of January, there were a couple weeks, and 1 week specifically, where I was in bed all week, and I didn't want to get up, pulled the covers over my head, didn't want to live anymore, not commit suicide, but just didn't want to live, and really struggled to function. I'm thankful like that time's passed now. I feel great. I'm feeling fantastic, a lot of energy, mental clarity. I'm fitting into old clothes again. Like it's great. But getting to this point, and I think the trip is part of it too, of having something to look forward to. But getting to this point has been a struggle. So that's something I really want to dive into, is addiction, and talking about that, talking about grief, as I mentioned, and trauma, and also to kind of trying to remove that stigma of therapy, that stigma of seeing a therapist or counselor, talking to somebody else about your problems. And I know, like, as a man and as a male, like, it's like, oh, I don't know, it's not frowned upon, but people look at you strange. Like, well, can't you just suck it up and own it? It's hard. And having somebody to talk to and share with is really important. So I want to help through this vlog and through the content in the channels, is to help kind of remove that stigma, and get people open and comfortable to talk about therapy and those different things. Because if you haven't dealt with those items that I mentioned, at some point in your life, you probably will. Not necessarily addiction, but grief and trauma. They're just a natural part of life, and they happen. So better to be prepared and kind of know the path, and there's people there to help you than to just try to do it on your own. So I'll leave you with this. A friend of mine shared this with me, and it was super helpful to me as I think about this week, and 5 questions, in addition to the prompts from the book, 5 questions that I'm continuing to ask myself this week as I go, in these next 3 weeks as I go through this process. So these are questions to ask yourself and the people whose opinions matter to you. Here it is on my phone. And I know you can't see it because it's out of focus. But number 1, what are you doing or talking about that makes you come alive? So what are you working on currently, or what are you doing that you are super excited about, passionate about, love to do, get you up in the morning, motivates you? What is that? And write that down. Also, and this applies to both a personal and professional perspective, to keep that in mind. So number 2, what is your superpower? So, it may not be the thing that makes you come alive, but it's something that you are a badass at. For me, I'm really good at graphic design, branding, logos, that type of stuff. I'm also really good at connecting people, and being like the super connector. It's not what necessarily, makes me come alive, but it's something I'm really good at, and I know I could do like in my sleep. As it relates to sleep, what keeps you up at night? This could be a positive or a negative thing. What is something that bothers you, that concerns you, that keeps you up at night, or something that you're so passionate about or you're excited about that it gives you anxiety at night, that you're worrying about it. And it kind of relates a little bit to that first one. The 4th one, what is it that you cannot stop doing? What is something you can't stop doing that's preventing you from going forward? For me, it's my love and care for my community, where I'm from. And even though it's not reciprocated to me all the time, I'm still passionate about seeing my community move forward, grow, and really through innovation and entrepreneurship. That's my big thing that I love. But it's really hard for me to not do that. And then finally, what's the thing you must do in order to do the things you want to do? So that first thing, what makes you come alive? What's preventing you from doing that? And what do you have to do in order to eliminate that? So whether it's removing boundaries, putting systems or processes or things into place, moving, ending a relationship with, a toxic friend, whatever it might be. What are those things that are preventing you, whether it's your time or, treasure or resources, that's preventing you from doing what you really want to do? So those are those 5 questions I'm going to continue to ask myself this week, and over the next couple weeks as I'm on this rediscovery journey, along with the writing prompts. And my goal with this vlog is to communicate not really to you, but to myself, that I can come back, watch this stuff, but most importantly, just to get it out. Writing and journaling and vlogging and all those forms of content are very healthy, very therapeutic. I know when my late wife was sick, I blogged, and it was super helpful for me. It was therapeutic for me. But a secondary benefit was it was helpful for others. And that's what I hope with this, is that for those that are watching this, that you might be able to get something out of it. Whether you do or not, that's I don't say I don't care. I hope you do. But for me, this is about helping myself process everything that's kind of going through my head and everything I've been through in the past 5 years. So it'd be great if it helps you, especially as we dive into some of these topics and these prompts. So use the comments section. If you don't like it, whatever, give me a thumbs down. But I hope to generate some dialogue, make this thing kind of spread and help get it in front of some people. So thanks for joining me for this first one. I'll be back on whenever I can. I don't know if it'll be every day, but hoping to keep it close to every day to keep you updated. But stay tuned on the channel here as well as on the social media channels on Instagram specifically as we move forward and create this thing. So thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you hopefully very soon.